throwing little like nuggets.
Yeah.
Were
Yeah.
you actually watching
Whenever you
when I
guys,
did this?
yeah. Whenever you guys are talking, I'll just kind of space out.
Oh, good.
Hi everyone, my name is Brittany Kirkpatrick,
And my name is Ty Whitman,
and we're the hosts of the Beyond the Narthex podcast.
a show where we sit down with members of CK Press and go beyond our Narthex and take a deeper dive into the lives of our church family.
Our hope is that each episode will cultivate and encourage new conversations for you, our listeners, with our guests.
Enjoy the episode. Alrighty, well, we are here with David Sweeney, who many people at the church I think have come to know by this point. But David, why don't you just start us off by telling us something that maybe most people wouldn't know about you, or people in the church might not know about you.
Yeah, so I think the things that people probably know the most about me now are that I'm into whales. That's what I do professionally. I used to do whale research. And so a lot of my non-church related hours are spent thinking about and caring about the biggest animals on the planet. And then additionally, a lot of people know I think that Steph and I have a love for gardening and caring for the environment in various ways, and caring for people and kind of the way that those two things come together while getting our hands dirty in the soil. But maybe something that people don't know quite as much is, despite my young and youthful appearance, my favorite kind of music is classical music. That was kind of my first true professional love when I was in high school. Was seriously contemplating trying to get into conservatories and stuff, and it was only kind of at the last minute that I decided not to go the professional music route.
What's a conservatory? I'm sorry.
That's a good question,
So a conservatory would be, so the famous ones would be like the Eastman School of Music or the Juilliard School.
Okay.
So these schools where instead of getting kind of your normal degree in business or math or chemistry, you would go and would major in music, would study everything music, would be trained by some of the top performers and teachers in music in the world, and kind of would just kind of focus every second of your life around music, performing in various ensembles and stuff. And I don't know exactly what sets like the difference between a conservatory or a school of music or just like the University of Washington, and they have a great music program, and what kind of distinguishes all those different things. But basically it's just hardcore music 24/7.
Wow.
Okay.
And that was your track up until, what, age 18 or so? All the way through
Yeah,
high school?
just before applying to colleges. Was involved heavily. I grew up in Chicago, involved in a lot of the top youth music programs in downtown Chicago. And a lot of my best friends in high school were people that then went on to a lot of the big name music schools. And so I was performing with them and competing against them in a polite manner.
Yeah.
With a lot of people that cared a lot about it, and was being trained by my coaches and teachers to at least be ready to go that route if I chose. But kind of last minute, just before applications and audition, like pre-recorded auditions and all that stuff was due, I decided to take a different route and just take a gamble and say, I don't know what I want to do. Let's figure it out.
Wow.
So.
And was it as light as you're making it out, or was that a pretty
It was a hard
integral
choice.
moment? Yeah.
Yeah, it was hard. Because for a long time, I seriously thought that that's what I wanted to do. And then I honestly don't remember exactly kind of what all made things change for me. Part of it was just kind of thinking about if that's the lifestyle that I want. And as much as I loved it, I was always really hard on myself and kind of took it out on myself in some bad ways, in unhealthy ways when I was younger. Like if I made mistakes while practicing in the living room, I would have like a temper tantrum and like throw my French horn mute across the wall. And there were a few holes in the wall that had to be patched that my dad was thrilled about growing up. And so, I don't know, I just maybe kind of thought about it, and maybe that factored into it. I'm not exactly sure. But
There was
don't
a
remember.
Nudge.
There was a nudge that wasn't the thing for me.
Sure.
So I just encouraged my friends who were going for it, and then said, see you later.
Wow.
So, yeah.
And French horn was going to be that instrument.
Yeah, French horn was going to be the thing. Yeah. Yeah, I had a bunch of friends that went on, a bunch of my French horn buddies that, won all these massive auditions and got into groups and stuff.
Oh, wow.
And I just cheered from the sidelines.
Yeah.
And they're actively pursuing this.
Yeah, I
as a
haven't
lifestyle.
kept up with many of them. I would like to, I should Google them sometime to see where they've landed at this point.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been a while since I've talked to any of them.
It's so wild. And music is not my world, but you do hear, or at least like from what you see in films, it's like the level of intensity and pressure the musicians place on themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Well, like you're explaining, that's so severe. And I know athletes do it too, like, to some degree. You know, we had players on our team like throwing, because I was a tennis player, throw their tennis rackets or like hit themselves with their racket. And it's just that level of pressure you place. So, I mean, that must build, especially when you're an adolescent. Just
Yeah, I felt like it forced me to kind of grow up in a weird, fast kind of way, because I lived about an hour outside of Chicago. And so when I started getting heavily involved in all these different music programs downtown, it meant that 3 to 7 days a week, depending on the time of year, I was having to commute after school down to the city.
Okay.
So that'd be 2 hours of travel after school, plus 3 hours or more of rehearsal, and then back, and then. So it was some weeks it was 40 hours of music on top of the school calendar and everything.
Wow, yeah.
And you were an athlete.
For a little bit in high school, but I stopped playing baseball, which was my sport, as I decided to switch over to music. So I did a hard cut.
Okay.
As I did that transition, because it was just going to be impossible
Too much,
to do both. I would just sit on the bench on the rare occasion that I could make it to a game, because I wouldn't be at practices. So it was.
That's wild.
It was full time, but it was fun.
Yeah.
Got to go to different places around the world to perform in TV, on NPR, international competitions, all sorts of stuff. So
that's cool.
Ooh.
It was
what
fun.
international competition, or plural?
So the biggest one that I played in was called the Fish-Off Chamber Music Competition. At the professional level, it's one of the most, for like the adult age class, it's one of the most competitive chamber music competitions. So small groups of like 3, 4, 5 players in the world, with teams from all over the world coming and competing. But there was also a youth division that took on, I think it's like 20 to 30 youth groups from around the world that auditioned to get into it. And then there's a rigorous kind of competition sphere where, you perform and move on to the next stage if you're one of the top teams. And so my team was invited to.
And where was that?
It's held every year at Notre Dame University. So it was relatively local for us, which was nice. But yeah, so we got to go and compete, and we got the best wins team for the youth division. So we got beat out by a bunch of string quartets and stuff. All the string players are just way better than us.
Interesting. So it goes by. I see.
Yeah, but yeah. So compared to the other like brass players and stuff, we won. So,
nice.
Man.
When you pick up your instrument now, do you often?
Not as much as I should.
Do you feel
worse?
Well, yeah. Well, obviously you're probably not as good as you were then, but when you play it, do you feel that same level of frustration as you mess up now, or do you kind of give yourself more grace because you're like, wow.
Probably a little bit more grace. I still have a little bit of the frustration, but it's not as. There's not quite as much of like a sense of urgency. Like I've got 2 weeks until this huge performance, and so if I don't learn my part, like I'm gonna let everybody down. It's not quite as much of that. Most of the time now I play at church, and I still, if you look at me playing in church, I'm still shaking.
Okay.
So a lot of my fears of performing have come back now that I'm out of the regular performance schedule. I used to be able to control it better.
Okay.
But yeah, I also recognize that church congregations are usually a little bit more gracious to a chipped note here or there.
Right. Well, we don't even
than a competition
notice.
judge or my teachers.
Oh gosh, we would hope so.
Yeah.
Should be getting feedback after.
Yeah, I'm not gonna get yelled at or scolded in front of all my friends if I chip a note.
Yeah. I think the most honest demographic would be our kids, and like it's okay if they're honest with us. I suppose.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Have you played tennis since high school?
I should clarify. I was never like to the level in tennis as it would be that David was in music. So I should definitely clarify that. I did play in high school and then 1 year in college.
Okay. So, but have you played since?
Oh yeah, just casually.
Okay.
Not competitively.
Yeah.
So that would be interesting.
But the reason I asked is because, like, for me, if I pick up a basketball, because basketball was my sport in the way that, like, but I don't know if I was ever as good as you were at French horn as I was at basketball, but I wasn't up to that level. But when I play now, I get really frustrated with myself.
Yeah.
Because I'm not nearly as good as I was.
Right.
And it's so, you're like, oh, like you miss a layup, and if you missed a layup in practice, like you were running.
Right.
You never miss layups, or you never miss free throws.
Right.
And now I do it all the time.
You're so hard on yourself.
And so I still feel I still get frustrated with myself. At times I have to go, okay, yeah, but you're 10 years older, your knees don't work anymore. You know, it's okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But it's really, so yeah.
It also helps for me that, so the biggest displays of my frustration were when I was just by myself.
Right. Yeah.
Because I wasn't gonna like freak out my friend next to me if I started screaming at
Yeah.
myself. So it was just when I was at home, and a typical day was probably about 2 hours.
Okay.
Of practicing on a day where I just was at home.
That's discipline.
And so I had in brass playing language, I had the chops to be able to play for 2 hours straight at that time. But now that I play like once a month, my lips are so weak.
Yeah.
So the extent to which I can play is only about like 15 really hard minutes.
Oh, okay.
So like the amount of time at which I can get frustrated is
also
reduced drastically.
Yeah.
So that's interesting.
Yeah. So that maybe helps.
The pie chart of frustration.
Indirectly gives me less opportunities for outlash.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Boy.
But, so.
Yeah, it's so fascinating how we carry that frustration. I can just remember I was a solo tennis or singles tennis player.
Yeah.
But now it's like when you play casually, because I feel like everyone's interested in pickleball's so big right now.
Pickleball's
and,
huge. Yeah.
People are like tennis. Might as well try tennis too. So it's like it really can be easy to just pick up and play with anyone. You notice skill levels, but it's still fun.
Yeah.
So I'm more inclined to do doubles now, and
Right. Yeah.
But it is wild how sometimes there's those little flashes of frustration. You're like, dang.
Yeah.
But.
Yeah.
Well, so, basketball though with you don't play that often, huh?
Not anymore, no.
No.
But partly because it's the same. Like I don't have the energy to play consistently.
Yeah.
And I would probably get more frustrated more often if I played more consistently.
Yeah.
So. I think I stay away just because I know it's gonna be it's like the golf course. I don't want to go to the golf course all the time because I know I'm gonna be like 2 holes in and go, I'm really mad at myself.
Yeah.
I'm really playing terribly.
Yeah.
That's easier to play terribly because most people aren't very good at golf. But
don't huck your 9-iron into the pond.
Yeah. Luckily, I've never had the urge to do any of that. I always say that the golf course is one of the most best places for sanctification. Because God is, if you're thinking about it, God can be like, don't do that.
Yeah.
Just pause. It's okay.
Yeah.
It's just a ball that didn't make it into a hole.
Yeah. Over the course of 9 holes, maybe he'll give you one good shot somewhere in the middle to kind of put you at ease.
And then at the end you go, okay, that was I still enjoyed myself, or I wasn't all that bad. And
I just have to change the whole way that the game is scored. It's did I lose more balls than holes?
Than holes, right? Yeah.
That's how I know if I'm under par or over par.
Yeah. Is there any? Do you find any kind of spiritual piece to playing the instrument? Did you then when you were playing often, and do you still now, or?
Definitely did, for sure. I do still now. Part maybe of I guess I'll just focus on when I did the most. Definitely when playing. So I've always kind of been a little snobby with what classical music I'm playing and liking the most. There's some modern pieces of modern composers that I think is fun to play, but that I don't necessarily see as being truly beautiful. With a lot of just intentional dissonance and complicated rhythms and stuff. I think shows off kind of a lot of unique ways in which music can be played and performed, and forces you to do a lot of new things with your instruments, which is really fun and exciting sometimes. But I think some of the older music is where I find true beauty in the art. And I think that that's always been something I've kind of latched on to. Maybe an element of that is I mean, because faith is a big component of my life and always has been. And so this view of God is kind of our definition of true beauty. And the fact that he gave us music as a form of, you know, something to enjoy and as a tool to worship. I think that there's, you know, certain pieces that when performing them, especially in certain venues and auditoriums and groups where you're kind of with a bunch of friends that just, you know, you're in an atmosphere that's really exciting. There's a lot of kind of built up butterflies going on, and then kind of just the music starts and you kind of lose yourself to it. Yeah. And into the performance. I can remember a few moments of having really kind of powerful moments of being in the music, and yeah, still it's one of the things that is able to get me to cry the fastest. Is certain pieces of music and certain moments and certain things. So I mean, part of that is also I think I'm getting older and getting just becoming more emotional in general. But when I was younger and prided myself on not crying very much, music was still one of the things that broke me quickest. So
whether listening or playing, just the music
itself. Mostly just listening, because when I'm playing there's still a little bit of the adrenaline that's keeping me going. Is if, you know, if I break down crying right before my solo, that'd be a little tricky. But yeah, now listening and you know, if I go to a concert or if I just plug some headphones in or whatever, and sometimes still gets the waterworks going.
Well, you have a question too. I don't want to.
No, go ahead.
The experience. So when you're in the music performing, or the past, I mean, is that almost an out of body experience? It's transcendent. It's Holy Spirit, like you to be lost in the music, and it's fine too if you can't really explain it. But is it unmatched in any other part of your life?
Yeah, I don't know if there's a environment in which I feel it quite the same. I mean, some of the times I remember it the most would be in a big auditorium, at some really beautiful concert venue, and you know, you're with all your friends, and it's like you and 120 of your friends that you've gotten to know in the orchestra, and there'd be some big piece with. For me, it's always when there's a lot of brass playing, because I'm a brass player. I think those are the best parts of classical music. No offense to the violas and oboe players of the world. There's just kind of this, like, you're just sweating buckets because it's so hot with all the lights on you. And you know that there's like 1,000 or 2,000 people in the audience staring at you. But you can't see them because it's all dark there, and there's like a light barrier when you're on the stage. And before some big part in the music, maybe you're like, okay, this is the moment. Like, if I mess a note now, it's going to be like a total failure and it's going to sound awful. And so there's kind of all this adrenaline, and you can tell all your other friends next to you are fidgeting a little bit in their seats, getting ready for it. And then the big moment comes, and assuming you don't miss every single note, it sounds good, and everybody's sort of in tune. It's a nice
collective wave.
Yeah, I think part of it, I've always enjoyed ensemble work more so than just playing a solo, because I like the kind of the feeling of everybody being cohesively kind of trying to communicate a single story through a piece of music, which is partly also why I was so into chamber music and competitions with that, as I formed this close knit, especially this time I was with a trio, so 2 other guys that I was really close with, and we just kind of, it seemed just by the end of the year just would flow together musically, and we would know how to just follow one another and knew when to, just little eyebrow winks at each other would be ways that we could, keep track of, stay in sync with one another and cue into each other.
It's pretty unique. It's really special. Yeah,
it was fun.
As a music critic yourself, what's your favorite?
It sounds like a question I'm going to offend some people that disagree with.
No. What's your favorite hymn?
Favorite hymn? I don't know. Let me think.
Is
I have
it a
one.
Lutheran hymn or a hymn written by Luther?
He had some good ones, that's for sure.
A Mighty Fortress is my favorite, so I'll just get that out of the way. But
good, proud of you.
Yeah.
I think it might be I forget. I think different hymnals might call it different, but "Go to Dark Gethsemane."
Yeah.
That's a good one. I always remember growing up at church, we would do. I think it was called a Tenebrae service, where as the service went on, it got darker and darker and darker, and there would be a point where we'd read a part of the scripture related to going to the Garden of Gethsemane, and then we would sing that hymn as like the whole sanctuary was already really dark, and the organ would just be playing this really kind of moody tone that just really gets you thinking about the suffering and sadness and seriousness of what was going on that day. So I think that might be my favorite hymn. That's probably the hymn that will get me to cry the fastest.
Yeah,
so
you read that hymn.
I'll use that as my definition of my favorite hymn.
You read that hymn to our youth at winter camp 2 years ago.
Oh,
Yeah.
Really?
The guys in our camp. That was...
Sorry, let me mute my phone.
No, it's fine.
But that's one that's I've always liked a lot. And I've gotten Steph to play it for me a couple times.
Nice. I guess, that's the nice thing about having the organ in your house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A little mini bedroom organ.
Yeah.
I know. Good for Steph, because it's... I mean, we should talk to her about this when we talk to her.
Yeah.
Because it's fairly recent, right?
Yeah, she played a little bit in college is when I think it started. She played piano growing up more. And then in college we had, in the fine arts building, there was a couple organ practice rooms that had these like miniature pipe organs. And so she took a couple lessons then. She also then took some lessons. She grew up in Vermont, and so there was an organist that they were connected with, her family, that she met with like for a summer. She took some lessons. So it's kind of... tried to sort of pick it up on her own, and at the same time take a couple lessons here and there, and just kind of have fun with it.
That's great.
Yeah.
So. Well, because I mean, our churches enjoyed getting to see you both when you do play together. I mean, whether it's praise band or, these separate performances. I guess the last time you would have played the French horn was the conference, right?
Yeah, the weekend when my folks were in town for the conference was.
Or I guess it was a Sunday that you played.
Yeah, it was on the Sunday when we played a little offertory thing.
Yeah.
That was the first time that we'd done anything publicly together, so that was kind of fun.
That's cool.
Really.
To do it. My mom was always saying that was her favorite part of the weekend.
Oh, how could it not be? Totally.
Yeah.
It's really special.
Yeah. So you move from music. You go to college. You go to Calvin University.
Calvin College.
Calvin College. That's right.
Yeah.
Are they university now, or are they still college?
Steph and I were the last graduating class of Calvin College.
Wow. And you guys were there at Whitworth when it was college still, weren't you? You and Tyler?
That's a good historical question. Well, I feel like it was a university. Did Tyler say otherwise?
No, I don't know. When was your first year?
My first year in college? 2009.
And his was 2008. Yeah, so he would have been there the first year. It was... Well, his first year was His first year was the last year of...
It's kind of fun to be part of those legacies that I didn't even know about.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Right,
exactly. So you go to Calvin College, which is not far from home.
Yeah, it was about 4 hours, so not too far, but out of the state and far enough from my loving parents.
And
the independence, 4 hours,
I'm just joking.
Yeah. What was why marine biology? How did you find yourself in that world?
Luck and chance and randomness, and a combination of those things. In high school, had a really, really awesome biology teacher. Shout out to Miss Elliott, wherever you are.
Miss Elliott.
Who I got really close with in high school. She actually lived downtown Chicago, and so when I would have some concerts, we'd get her a ticket, and so I'd that was kind of fun having my biology teacher showing up at a random concert, that was really nice of her to do all that. But yeah, she was an awesome teacher, and so I really liked biology. Also had a really good math teacher in math classes. Shout out to Mr. Leverance.
Yes.
And so kind of biology and math were my things that I really liked the most. But actually started off when trying to go to college thinking I would go into economics, so more the math route. That was the major I declared before even taking any college classes. And that's what I applied to be as. But once I declared that I was going to go to Calvin and started going through the whole process of registering for first semester classes, I guess there was just a massive swarm of people wanting to be econ majors. And so all of the intro economics classes were full for the first semester by the time they got around to S in the alphabet of Sweeney's being able to register for courses. And so I had to choose something else, and so just decided to throw a biology class into the mix. That was a core curriculum requirement, was to get a bio class in. So I took a evolution and ecology, or something similar to that class my first semester, and had two really, really cool profs, one of whom they kind of co-taught the class, and one of the professors I became very, very close with. Both Stephanie and I became very close with him, Dave Warners. And I struggled pretty hard. The first semester would bomb a couple of the first tests, and so then would go to him really stressed out about it. And basically he was just always telling me to take a chill pill and realize that I cared a lot about it. And kind of through just always engaging with him and talking with him, he got me connected with this program which does summer courses for students that are enrolled at any of the major Christian universities and colleges around the country. It's called the Ensemble Institute of Environmental Studies or Sciences. But they're based in Michigan, and so my bio prof was connected and would teach some of the courses for them in the summer in Michigan, which is how he knew about it so well. But they had classes actually here out on Whidbey Island in Washington. That two of the classes, one was marine biology and one was marine mammals. And so I took those two as 5-week intensive courses during the summer.
You came out here?
So my first summer of college, I came out to Whidbey Island for 5 weeks. And took these two classes, had a lot of fun. Got to go digging around in tide pools throughout the Puget Sound. We'd go out to Friday Harbor, and we had some really cool encounters with killer whales while we were there. And so kind of while doing that, fell in love with just kind of creation care concepts, and especially with marine biology. As a little kid, had a couple little family vacations that were to beaches, or one cruise that we went on where I have memories of seeing dolphins or seeing a pod of humpback whales and stuff. And so I don't know, I have strong memories of that. And then to actually be able to study that was really cool, especially in connection with a bunch of other Christians, and how do we think about evolution as scientists that are dedicated to our faith. And then so then went back and started trying to just find internships that were marine science related, which when you're in Michigan is a little tricky, because you're about as far away from an ocean as you can get. Was hoping to get some really cool glamorous internship at one of these massive oceanographic institutions, like at Scripps or Woods Hole or one of the UW or whatever. And they all rejected me, so that was real nice of them. But I got a internship connected to a statistics professor at my school, which I thought was going to be the most boring thing ever. I was so bummed. I was like, really? I can't be on a boat for the whole summer. I got to study statistics, man. But it turned out to be the best summer for my professional life ever. Wound up working with my statistics prof, who wound up being my closest advisor all throughout college. I was still a biology major, but spent most of my times in the statistics wing. So my professor, basically, I didn't know this when going to college, but is an integral team member in a lot of kind of leading marine mammal science research around the world.
Wow.
And so I worked with her, got a lot of experience kind of doing coding and data analysis related to data we retrieve from tags that we deploy on whales. And from gaining the experiences to be able to do that led to a future internship that I did at Duke University's Marine Lab that she got me a connection to. And then it also then landed me my current job. Initially, when getting out of college, was trying to get into graduate programs in whale science, and again got rejected everywhere. But kind of started doing the last minute scramble to find jobs. And my professor connected me with this little small company that had just recently started up out in Seabeck, Washington. That just is what drew me out here. Had an interview that I thought I bombed again, but they were gracious enough to take me on as some young punk, eager to see the world. And yeah, I've been working with them now for 4 years, and still to this day have weekly, or I guess it's not weekly anymore, but in 2 days from now, I'll be having a meeting again where this professor from Calvin is on. She's one of our closest collaborators.
Oh, very cool.
So just got lucky with a connection that way that just kind of stumbled into as I was trying to just kind of figure out life. And then, she's just a wonderful person and a wonderful supporter of me professionally. So, yeah.
Truly, what gifts.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I feel like, I know you work with students too, with the youth, and it just seems like every rejection is not the end of the road.
Yeah.
And then also just, you never know what relationships are going to continue to thrive and be able to.
Yeah.
I mean, you're so encouraged and poured into by this advisor still. That's wild.
Yeah. I mean, I at one point found out that she had a Twitter page, and so I followed her on Twitter, and her, everybody has little bios on their Twitter page of like, this is my little one sentence of who I am. And most people in the sciences, it's like, I have a PhD from this top school and I'm super awesome and have all these degrees. But hers was a simple quote that I think she came up with that says, the biologists think I'm a statistician, the statisticians think I'm a biologist, I think it's great, or I think it's awesome, something like that. And I just thought that was kind of cool. And so I got really, tried to learn as much as I could from her in terms of like software, coding, data analysis, statistics, while still being, focused on the biology questions. And even now, I'm again looking towards graduate programs and specifically graduate programs in statistics. So it's all thanks to Stacy DeRuyter. She's kind of lit a fire in my butt and pushed me off in this direction that I initially thought would be really boring, because I just wanted to be on a boat on the ocean doing.
Now you are.
Yeah, and now I am, but also now wanting to be heavily involved in the statistical side of things, because without statistics we can't answer the questions that we want to with the data that we collect. So
numbers aren't boring.
No, they're not. So
always.
That's kind of my way that I wound up integrating my love of math and biology in high school. And like, maybe I'll be an economist so I can use math. Well, now I'm using math and my biology at the same time. So I was, I don't know. Nice. I got really lucky. Like that's what it comes down to. It's
you're very blessed.
It's a rare. There's so many kids growing up. They're like, I want to be a dolphin trainer. I want to work with whales, and to be the guy that says, I don't want to do that. I want to do something totally different, and then to fall into it. Yeah. And then to be asked sometimes for like, now I'm getting asked for career advice. I'm like, well, like, if you really want to do this, there's probably like more effective direct ways than the way that I went. I really just got lucky. Like, you probably don't want to go to Michigan to do
you're
school.
Start here. And
that's that wouldn't be the first thing that somebody would think about, is go as far away from an ocean in order to get a job studying whales in the ocean. Right. Yeah. So I just really fell into it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like the more people I meet, the more people I see that's kind of where their story, it's similar, right? Yeah. Like, I mean, mine is similar in the sense, like, I went to college to be a computer science and business major, right? And then I switched a bunch of times. Yeah. But I kind of fit, like, it just kind of landed in my lap that I was going to do ministry,
right?
had no plans to do that at all. I mean, my degree's in economics, and so,
Mm-hmm.
and then, I feel like everybody has these. They have these plans, and sometimes it actually does work out.
Yeah.
And for a lot of people, that's exactly what they were called to do and supposed to do, and so it works really well.
Right.
But for a majority of the people that I hear that like, well, I had this plan, but this is where I'm at.
Yeah.
You can see, well, this is really where you're supposed to be.
Yeah. I'm a planner too.
Yeah.
And even when I got this job that I currently have, I thought it would be just a short-term thing.
Mm-hmm.
I immediately tried to get into graduate school the next year, got rejected, and the different in sciences kind of oftentimes funding has to kind of line up in addition to getting into the school, and so like both things were never happening simultaneously. And so so then I 4 years later I realized that I really like the company that I work with. And at least for my plan that I foresee my long-term future now is being connected with them for a really long time. So it's I always there's always people that whenever I'm talking about like it's just totally luck, they're like, oh, but you worked hard. And I think like a lot of people work really hard though. That's it's not I'm some super hard worker more so than anybody else kind of thing. So it's so
it's clearly it's like an ordained calling.
Yeah, God's hand kind of pushing me.
Which I don't know if that's something that you feel like you can always talk about in your workspace either, and how natural it comes up. But I mean, stepping stones are always provided, and so it just seems like. But then what's also impressive is for you and Stephanie, you're able to really immerse yourself in a place, even as you're applying to grad school. It doesn't. It doesn't negate the fact that you are also very present with where you are, which is a joy for everybody around that also gets to know and be involved with the garden or music and just with your family to some capacity. So
I go ahead.
Oh yeah, I was just I think we've always we grew up in families I think that cared a lot, not just about like the ways that in which you make a living and the ways that you have fun and stuff, but kind of valuing the ways that we care for one another and encourage one another, and was always kind of challenged into those things growing up, and I think that it just kind of little parts of that stuck, and so when we moved to different communities, we were immediately trying to get involved with different things, and I mean it took us 2 years or so, a year and a half to land at this church, but then we had a lot of fun plugging in really quickly with a lot of people, and with the speed at which we decided to throw the garden together, we were kind of nervous as being such new people. Weren't even members yet when we were asking for money to start the garden project.
So note to self: should be members before asking for money.
Or just
kidding.
Be bold.
Be overly confident. Say that it's going to be a really cheap program to start up, and then realize it's going to be more expensive than you planned initially, and just keep asking for money.
And there it is. It's thriving.
So we felt a little bad kind of as things started. We're like, oh man, maybe we did this way too quickly. Like maybe there's people that are like offended with how we've handled this. But we've been very, very encouraged by the people in the church and the support that we've got. And nobody yet has seemed mad at us for how we've handled it. So hopefully that's all right. No. If anybody is mad, feel free to approach us. We'll take any complaints.
After this podcast, you can
talk to David,
but no, I don't think
email at
it'll be a number of
It'll
be a number of months.
That's the plug.
Right, there you go. Yeah. It'll be a number of months after we record, and so then you'll be like, I don't know what you're talking about.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
There's two things that are on my mind. The first is that it's so unique, I think, in this kind of age of our culture where because people are so uncertain about the future and people are so transient, that they will do the opposite of what you did, especially young people, people in our age. They're like, I don't want to get plugged in because it'll make it hard when I have to leave. I'm not sure if I'm going to be here that long and that kind of thing. And so they kind of stay at a distance so as to not make that severance really
even harder,
difficult. Yeah. When what ends up happening is they end up staying longer than they expected, and so then they're missing that community, and for that time they're just like they don't have friends or something that they're plugged into, something that they're committed to that gives them life that's outside of their job, and so I think it's such a cool thing to kind of watch you guys do, and it was really refreshing for Tyler and I, because we see churches all over the place struggling to get millennials to buy into the church and like actually they'd be like, we want this, but then not want to do anything. And you guys, these people that not members, brand new to the church, you're like, not only do we want to be a part of the church, but we want to like really invest in the ministry, and it's just a really cool picture of what it means to live out your faith and live in a faith community, regardless of if you could have gone to grad school last year or 2 years ago, or so yeah,
that space and time, it all intersected really well, and it makes you wonder too, like the number of people, because our community is so transient, that do come through the doors, and whether or not deployment was knocking or just a move or something, it's like how many, the timing was just off, but it is. Yeah, it is beautiful to watch something flourish, and then also for it to be a garden.
Yeah.
Like the metaphor couldn't even be
exactly.
just more perfect. Like, so.
Yeah, Steph's always been really into gardening and botany. Like botany was kind of her focus as a biology and environmental science major in college, and so that's always kind of been a love of hers, especially the way in which it is like a starting point to both be able to approach conversations about how do we as Christians kind of focus on like the issues of climate change, and how do we be leaders as people that view creation as a gift from God for us to care for and to steward. How do we help lead the global movement to protect future generations from and even current generations from some things that are happening at different parts of the world that are, we believe to be caused by human actions and misuse of the resources that we've been entrusted with. And then also just a way to engage with community really directly. The fact that we are donating all the food is really intentional. We're pleased to hear that the church was really excited about us being able to just give away all of the food. Right. We thought about we could give like volunteers the food to be like a way of enticing volunteers to come and stuff. A lot of farms do that frequently as a way to get volunteers. But it felt for us as a church community, as we were communicating with a lot of people and getting ideas about how to run this from other church members that were passionate about the idea as well. That if we could do it, we'd give all the food away, and that's really fun to be able to do. And so kind of to be able to kind of dwell in all of those worlds at the same time while doing just really simple practical stuff. I feel like so my dad has worked at a seminary my whole life, and so I grew up with a bunch of really heady Christians who were always trying to think about the Bible better and advance ways of us thinking about the Bible, and the ways that I was always most touched by those kinds of people was not when they gave some lecture that drew thousands of people and was amazing, wrote some book that I never read, but it was when someone was kind of doing like practical theology, where like they took like, look, I care about the Bible, so now I'm going to go do something about it. I'm going to go, serve this person that needs something or something. And so I think that I've always had kind of this, even though I grew up in this very academic world, have always had the most respect for the people. I don't know if that's the right way to put it, but I've had a lot of respect for the people that are, taking the things that they learn and then just devoting their entire lives to just the really hard, manual, dirty, sweaty, emotional work of, being a carer or being in construction and, building homes for families, or, just the people that have the jobs that don't always get so much appreciation, in the global perspective, or don't make the most money because of what they do, but are really the people that are the foundation of our societies. And I think that, gardening and farming is a perfect example of that. And so I've, even though I'm not very good at gardening, Steph's the boss for sure. And just have a lot of joy being able to practice that.
Yeah. Well, in this experience you could insert garden here or marine biology or whatever, but with your faith in action, because it does sound like the ability to see others modeling their faith in action and actually putting it into practice has been pretty impactful for you. And I would totally agree. I mean, it makes a lot of sense. You want to see, the fruits, or at least the attempt to be connected with others. Is the garden, or what would be your connection, your intersection with, where you're called to vocationally and where faith is acted out in your life?
Yeah. So are you talking in my professional career specifically? Is that what you're focusing at?
Wherever you'd like to take that question at.
Yeah. So I guess, in terms of my free time, a lot of it is garden related. Which I sort of just hit on, but then at least in terms of my professional life, I feel kind of a vocation in that as well. In terms of, I think that animals are a wonderful thing. I think that there's a lot of beauty there. There's always been some of the Psalms. It's like Psalm 96, 98, 100 something, kind of right in that pocket of the Psalms. There's a lot of Psalms related to creation, singing praises, and worship to God. And so as being somebody that spends my days sometimes they're really tedious days of just, finding a mistake in my code that I made that's been causing problems, or, it doesn't always seem like you're really at the forefront of conservation and protecting species, diversity, and all that. But to kind of be living into that goal and calling is really fun for me. We study some endangered populations. We study animals that are at high risk of kind of human impacts on the environment. And to try to protect them kind of with a lens of they make noises. The Bible says they're singing praises to our Creator, just like we do on a Sunday with the hymns that I like or the classical music that I like to play. So that lens is really cool. There's also some ways in which I think that I find on a day where I'm on the water, I feel like I'm able to kind of experience something that from a book that I read, this concept of everyday glory, where just you see the size of the animals that we're dealing with, where their eyeball is the size of my head, as they swim underneath my boat, to experience that, or to experience the power of waves and the oceans and the weather, and to think that was all just kind of set in motion by,
Creator.
Yeah. He spoke and it was good.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool to be able to engage with that, just really firsthand. And I always say that, talk about this with Stephanie, and I think I got this from my dad, that when we're by the water and you kind of have the sound of gentle waves or rough waves crashing, or you're kind of adrift and kind of are going with the feeling of the swell as it goes under your boat and rocking you. Those are the moments where kind of our day-to-day anxieties just kind of rush away the quickest, where we kind of feel the most at peace. And so I have both a professional and just like an emotional, very I don't know even how it works, but just kind of this peaceful awe with being on the water. So, yeah.
Yeah, there is something about, just for me, not having as nearly as much of an acquaintance with the water as you do, but if you're out on a boat on the ocean and then suddenly realizing that you're, like, how vast the space is, and thinking about how, at least like when I'm up at Orcas Island and I'm on a little tiny metal dinghy and I look over and I can't see anything, like there's no land in front of me, and you go, that goes for miles. Like what is it? You can only see, most people that have good vision can see 2 miles ahead, I think, right?
A couple that you could at least spot something.
You can see, but to know that, like, I don't know how vast the ocean is, but I'm just this tiny little speck in in this vast thing, and so you realize your kind of your finitude and in the world, and
and not to get too nerdy, but also to think about the ways in which, like in oceanography classes, you learn about all these concepts of how the currents impact our weather,
right,
and how all these different elements of how interconnected the oceans are. It's really, if you think about the perspective of a fish, like, a fish isn't like traveling the whole ocean, but it's just one interconnected web of waterways, sometimes blocked by ice, but it's kind of a cool thing to think, to take a step back from, and to the more you learn about it, the more complex you realize it is, and the more you realize how dumb you are in the grand scheme of things, and just how much there is that we don't understand and don't know, and thus how much God does know, and how much, how hard it would be to be that creator.
Right.
But
yeah, and do you? I mean, this can go to both of you. Do you feel like that's helpful, Christian or not? Dumb or like humbled to have that experience of, I guess, it is being humbled, where you're just so small in the world. Like, because I think initially people might feel fear because you're so small and you're so out of control. But if you connect it to, that you don't have to be in control, like, of everything else that is around you and out there. I mean, do you think that's just a helpful practice to just recognize and know, like, I am small?
Yeah, I absolutely think so. I think it gives a lot of hope to people. There's a lot of anxieties that people in my world and in Stephanie's world are wrestling with as we try to, help solve issues related to climate change and, climate change on a grand scale, or just, pollution and other things on a smaller scale. And to kind of think about, the ways in which the small actions of one person over time can add up, and then the small actions of 10 people each doing their individual small actions is even bigger and bigger. I think there's a lot of hope there. Also just to know that God does have a plan, and not to use that as a way to, like, just discourage everybody from trying hard, because we're supposed to follow His will, so we're a part of the plan. So we can't just sit idle. But there's a lot of hope, I think, in that, to be able to think about that. And there's, so it's probably a weird section of the Bible that not many people have as maybe as their favorite part of the Bible. But as somebody named after King David, there's a moment, I think it's Second Samuel.
Second Samuel.
Second Samuel.
Yeah. Probably. I
Where
haven't memorized the whole Bible. So.
We could add notes.
Yeah. You just, whatever, when I say it wrong, you just, like, cut over the screen. I'll mouth something and then you just stitch in the right.
Right.
But anyway, so it's when David's king.
Yeah.
And it's basically this moment where he just is caught dancing naked for the Lord.
Yeah.
And I think it's just a really silly, small little section of the Bible. But this idea of just kind of doing what you're doing, unashamed, going crazy for it, for the good of God's kingdom. You know, to kind of, I'm not saying I'm ever going around dancing naked, but, you know, to kind of have that, the playful energy of that, and to just kind of take that small little nugget of kind of silliness, what kind of feels like silliness, and turning it into kind of a way to motivate and frame our lives, and how we do just kind of mundane things sometimes, or sometimes things that are really challenging, or like would be pinnacle moments of somebody's career, and to kind of put it in this perspective of like, you're this little silly dude that's just out there embarrassing himself, and you're super stressed, like, but just go be crazy for the Lord, and
right.
Yeah, I don't know. I always,
Unashamed.
yeah, this unashamed in what you're doing, assuming it's a good thing that you're doing.
Yeah.
You know, it's probably good to add that clarification. But yeah, I always think that that's a fun little token in Scripture of just a fun way to every once in a while be able to kind of focus our lives in the ways that we're carrying
us.
out our simple mundane actions.
Well, yeah, I mean, and kind of to connect it to even more to the idea of feeling kind of small or maybe insignificant at times.
Sure, yeah.
Doing that, thinking about that, you may go, King David, who had a lot of faults.
Oh yeah.
Man after God's own heart, didn't take himself. He's king. Yeah. All that seriously all the time.
No, that's good.
And like that's exactly how we're supposed to. Like I think sometimes people get to a place where like I'm 40, or I'm 30. I'm supposed to be an adult now. I'm not supposed to be silly or anything like that. But sometimes, I mean, God's enjoy yourself. Yeah. Find great joy and enjoyment in weird, quirky things that maybe you only find enjoyment in. Yeah. And there's a lot of beauty there.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of freedom there too, because you're like, oh yeah, if I'm not serious all the time, it's okay, because it's okay if I'm not super focused on this one thing, because I'm just enjoying life, and that's part of God's design.
Yeah, I think if you let loose a little bit in that way, it kind of gives yourself the freedom to like do, compassionate things, and it doesn't kind of turn your focus too much in on yourself. And and I'm not saying I'm ever amazing at this. I fail at this all the time. Just ask Steph. But yes, it's be silly, be as somebody that always is a little weird, I think, socially. I've never been like some super confident, I'm a weird introvert. To see other people kind of be weird introverts, or just be like extroverts that just like bring people together, or like all these different weird ways in which we have our personalities and try to figure out life and what the heck we're doing. Just kind of see somebody that's just going for it. Yeah. Is kind of, it's encouraging, refreshing. Yeah. And it's, as somebody that's insecure a lot, to see, some older folks that have just kind of figured out who they are and what their life is like, to see them still kind of have these silly moments to make fun of me on a Sunday morning. It's a refreshing way to be encouraged. Yeah.
I mean, we're Presbyterians, and so what is the chief end of man? To glorify God and enjoy Him forever. Yeah. It's not to glorify God and to be serious in worship.
Yeah.
But like some of the so it's that came to mind.
Yeah. I like that. Yeah. Be a silly little dude.
Yeah. Be a silly. Yeah. Be a David. Yeah. You could be like you, David, or King David. Either way.
Oh man, I know in my mind I'm just going through the silliest moments that I've experienced, and it is, I don't need to share. I'm not going to share. That'll be another podcast. So. But that's it's refreshing, David, because I feel like when you're in a vocation where the anxiety is real, the everyday news is like, you're living in a reality that if you're with endangered animals, they could be extinct in a couple decades. I mean, I don't know if I'm actually quoting that correctly or not, but just it could be grim, but it's still joyful to be on the water, and it is all in how we view, what God is giving us day to day.
Right.
Yeah.
But in light of that, like, there is so much capacity to still continue living into joy and compassion while still working dutifully and being stewards of the earth, like you're talking. And
Yeah.
yeah.
We are both not in control, which is freeing.
Yeah.
But we get the unique privilege as Christians, as all people, but really as Christians, to be aware of this, that we are actively participating in the will of God when we do those things.
Yeah.
When we seek after and care for His creation, or when we, I mean, if you just want to go to the thing that maybe most people can do, because not everybody can take care of animals. Take care of whales. People can take. I guess they could. I don't know.
Yeah.
You might have some. I saw a book on your shelf yesterday that said we're all whalers.
Yeah. That'd be a really good book. That's a new book out by a very well respected whale conservation biologist, veterinarian.
Yeah, it looked interesting. I think anyways, we won't go into it. But like just sharing the gospel, we're actively participating in what God is doing on earth and in the salvation of His people, and just kind of seeing that through your lens of you're not directly interacting with the whale's ecosystem, right? You're kind of helping us and helping other places figure out to make sure that the whales are more free to move. And I don't know if I'm saying anything that makes any sense.
Yeah.
I'm
Kind of like a guardian.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, to hit specifically on what the heck I do, it's the majority of my work is funded through the U.S. Navy.
Yeah.
To study the impacts of Navy training activity and other various things that occur on some kind of key priority species of interest. So we have some long-term monitoring projects to kind of track the health of the population of individuals, and then also some more kind of short-term projects related to behavioral response of whales to sonar activity, or that's kind of the key one. But there's also other things that the Navy does that disturbs whale behavior, and so it's not that we're out there on a day-to-day pushing a whale back off a beach that's stranded or whatever like that. Right. But we're doing a lot of work that gets published in reports and papers that then the Navy takes, and the managers and stakeholders and people at NOAA, National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration. I totally blanked on the first A there for a second. That a lot of them will take to help prepare how to how to group the ways in which we monitor populations of individuals, or whatever, lots of stuff that goes on. So we're not taking an almost dead animal and making them well right in the immediate.
It's different than rehabilitation.
But kind of these long-term projects is what our focus is on. And
long obedience.
Yeah. And especially when you're studying animals that are hard to find, and there's not a lot of you can't answer all the questions in 1 year. So it requires these kind of long-term projects to really collect enough data to say anything meaningful.
Well, thank you, David.
Yeah.
I feel like, there's so much more. We always just kind of scratch the surface, it seems, with understanding a little bit more about just in our conversations in general. But it's nice that our congregation knows you as David and Stephanie in the garden, and but we appreciate the work and like the involvement that you do have in our community, extending outward too. So if people were to come up to you in the Narthex and want to continue a conversation with you, is there something that you're super eager to talk about, or how would they go about approaching that conversation?
I'm happy to talk about any of the stuff that came up today, but also just would love to hear about the things that other people have going on. I know that I'm definitely guilty of not always being a good conversationalist and question asker. And so I apologize to those of you who I may have not asked good questions to.
Is this a confession?
But no, I think that, that's huge, I think.
Yeah, for sure.
And to just talk about the ways that we all are doing work that is encouraging to others.
Absolutely.
Regardless of what it is. I think it's just really fun to focus on the interests of everybody. And sometimes to find connections. There's been tons of people in the church that we found these weird connections of like, I used to live 40 minutes from where you grew up and I've eaten at, the same restaurants as you and like all these sort of little things. So it's fun to, as you get to know more people, make all these little connections.
Oh man, our web of connectivity is
it's crazy how, just 2 minutes of small talk, you find all these connections with another person and then you just can form fun relationships that way. So
that's really neat.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's been one fun way of spending time with each other in the garden. So kind of when you're just in the dirt next to another person and you start up some small talk, you can learn some fun things about people.
You gotta do something to make being in the dirt fun.
It's already fun, man.
Yeah. It's not my gift.
Yeah.
I've
got dirt on my knees. You're wearing a suit right now, so.
when we were the first garden party, not the first garden, but one of the first ones of the season when your parents were here. I was, we were getting kind of the garden ready. Yeah. And I was just like.
The weeding.
That was a hard day.
My body is not built for this.
No, that's a hard day. Yeah.
Well, good job showing up, Ty.
Well, yeah.
There you go.
Well, it just shows, I guess anybody could come help. You don't all. Luckily, weeding is done.
Yeah.
Right. So
for the most part, yeah.
For the most part, but
every week.
But the thing that was the most enjoyable about that time was and the thing that made it go by fast actually was the conversations with the people that were there.
Yeah.
And you do like Alice. There's a woman here at our church named Alice Hartley, who I had heard of a lot and maybe had shaken her hand once or twice, but I got to actually know about a little bit about her background. Or like your dad was there, so I got to ask him some questions and learn about his background a little bit. And so it's just that's a really cool place, I think, for those connection points.
Yeah.
The beyond the Narthex spot.
Well, and you got to get the extroverts out there to be
That's
asking
true.
the questions.
Right,
so
yeah.
Ty can be over there.
Yeah, because there's a bunch of introverts. I'm sure you could just you probably do find a lot of joy just sitting in the dirt by yourself with silence.
Yeah.
You probably do. Yeah.
It stresses Steph out sometimes at home.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
She'll feel like we're just sitting on the couch doing our own thing, and then she'll be like, feel bad, like, am I not entertaining you enough or anything?
Are you not entertained?
No, I'm very happy sitting quietly.
Yeah, very content.
That's who I am. It's all good.
Yeah.
But
that's so good.
And she's an introvert too.
Yeah.
But it is.
Yeah.
It's one way that I need to always be getting better at.
Oh.
We get to have these conversations every week. It's true. Like get to know each other and and then Narthex and be a crazy little dude. I love it.
Yeah, that'll be the title of the podcast. Right there.
Awesome.
All right.
Thank you, David.
Yeah.
Thank you guys.